the spark of defiance in the cold expanse beyond the Veil Nebula. A shimmering arc of light danced across the dark canvas of space. What seemed like a meteor was, in truth, a Terran probe, obsolete by Imperial standards, yet it carried with it a warning. Humanity had not been broken. High above the fractured remains of the human colony, Ardent 9, the Imperial dreadnought Thyrex Ascendant hovered like a vulture over a fresh corpse. Admiral Xyla Tyran, an obsidian-ranked tactician of the Velari Dominion, leaned over his command pedestal. His clawed hands traced through layers of floating tactical hollows, glowing blue in the shadow of the bridge. The mission had been simple. The colony, display Imperial power, and return with metrics proving domination. Yet something had gone wrong. As the last of Ardent 9's transmissions crackled into silence, a final message pierced Imperial comms with strange clarity. 5 words, encoded in ancient Terran script, slipped past firewalls and embedded themselves into every receiving terminal. You shouldn't have done that. The message wasn't signed, wasn't traced, and wasn't explained. It had no source. But within hours, it spread through secure military networks like wildfire. Analysts tried scrubbing it. Security forces issued containment orders. Still, the phrase kept reappearing on ship consoles, recruitment posters, even vending modules. Admiral Xyla dismissed it at first. A psychological trick, he sneered. They've lost their colonies. They've lost their will. But somewhere deep within the command systems of the Empire's flagship, something began listening. Back on Earth, buried beneath the Atlantic ridge, Commander Eli Vaughn stepped through the entry chamber of the Atlas core. Thick reinforced walls hissed open behind him, revealing a command deck unlike anything ever built. Hundreds of analysts, engineers, and strategists worked in silence, each screen showing a different portion of the galaxy. Above them, a single banner hung. This time, we finish it. Eli's face was drawn, but his eyes were sharp. 5 years ago he had watched helplessly as Ardent 9's dome shattered above his sister's home. He had been a diplomat then, a negotiator, a believer in peace. Now, he wore black dot around him. Earth's best minds had done what no one thought possible. They stole Imperial tech, reverse-engineered their fastest ships, and hacked systems the Velari thought unbreakable. While the Empire celebrated their so-called victory, humanity had been crafting vengeance in silence. Each base they lost became a lesson. Each life taken became fuel. Inside hidden bunkers across Mars, Europa, and the lunar belt, entire populations had migrated. Underground, above ground, Earth presented a facade of ruin-abandoned cities, scorched fields, derelict satellites. A perfect illusion. What the Velari couldn't see were the cities pulsing beneath, humming with artificial ecosystems, weapons forges, stealth shipyards, and AI-commanded drone factories. The Empire had underestimated humanity's talent for turning trauma into technology. In one such facility, a small child trained with a neural-linked drone swarm. Her name was Nova Kim. She was 11. Her mother had been crushed beneath rubble in the new Kyoto bombardment. Now, Nova could fly 20 interceptors through a simulation with 96% kill efficiency. She wasn't exceptional. She was the new normal. Meanwhile, Earth's top engineers had achieved something the Velari deemed impossible: dimensional weaponization. By exploiting minor fluctuations in dark matter resonance fields, they had created what came to be known as phase shift cannons. Weapons that didn't just blast through armor but slipped through dimensions, rearranging enemy ships molecule by molecule. Velari shielding wasn't designed to stop science they didn't know existed. In a secret meeting held in the Vault of Shadows beneath Mount Elbrus, the Terran Unified Command convened. Representatives from once fractured nations now stood shoulder to shoulder, their colors replaced by a shared emblem, the silver phoenix rising through burning stars. The table was circular, no hierarchy, no politics, just purpose. Commander Eli stood before them and opened with a single phrase: "We respond in kind." Silence followed, then nods across the table. A former orbital physicist, now turned weapons designer, unrolled schematics of the new stealth fleet. Another, a biologist, turned signal jamming specialist, detailed how their viral code had embedded itself in Imperial sensor networks. Every system the Velari trusted was now compromised, waiting for a trigger, outside in the launch bays. The first wave of Terran stealth destroyers prepped for jump. Each vessel was coated in refractive nanoveils that could mimic cosmic background radiation. Unseen, untouchable, undeniable, their weapons systems hummed with energy levels previously considered theoretical. Their crew was not made of warriors but of engineers, scientists, orphans, and teachers, people who had lost everything and now had nothing left to fear. The mission was called Operation Phoenix. Not because humanity intended to rise, but because it had already risen, and now, it would burn down what tried to bury it. Admiral Zyla Tiran, far removed in the Empire's central nexus, laughed when he saw the probe reappear near the Velari Prime Array. They still send toys, but as the signal decrypted as system after system began flashing warnings, as fleet control centers started going dark, even he had to admit something was coming, something very human. Whispers in the void. A week after the Terran probe reactivated the dormant Velari network, the Empire's data centers began glitching across multiple systems. At first it was minor misspelled text strings, timestamp, desyncs, and subtle latency spikes. Technicians on Velari outposts blamed solar flares, ion storms, or firmware updates. None of them suspected the truth. What they were witnessing wasn't a system fault, it was the slow awakening of a ghost. On the Empire's outer research world, Silent 4, a young Velari data curator named Yarth, noticed something disturbing. Entire sensor logs were missing 3 full weeks' worth, gone without a trace. He tried restoring backups, corrupted. He reached out to upper command. Silence buried in the corrupted data archive. Behind layers of false encryption, Yarth found a string of repeating Terran numerals, one sequence. One signal. 000-000-005. Sector 5. Operation Phoenix had already begun, but before Yarth could transmit his findings, the lights around him flickered. His screen turned black. Then, for exactly 3 seconds, a human face appeared, half-lit, and whispering a phrase in an ancient Terran dialect. Not yet, but soon. Then everything went dark. The entire Silent 4 facility was erased from orbit 6 hours later. Not bombed, not attacked, just deleted. When a Velari scouting vessel arrived, there was nothing left. No debris, no signal, not even heat residue. Like the entire mass had been surgically carved out of space-time. The Empire's high command declared it a rogue black hole anomaly, but others weren't so sure. Across scattered Imperial colonies, rumors began to rise of ships going dark, of elite surveillance satellites being blinded, of unknown jump signatures leaving no trace. In the halls of Velari's prime intelligence, even whispers of a Terran resurgence were considered treason, but the anomalies kept growing. Meanwhile, back in the Sol system, Commander Eli Vaughn stood in the central observation platform of the stealth carrier Gaslight, orbiting the hidden Saturn base nicknamed Echo Deep. This was one of the many vessels that had never been registered by any known galactic registry. No transponder, no signature, no light. Below him, his daughter Layla suited up inside the pilot prep chamber. Only 19, she had already completed over 3,000 hours of simulated engagements and 3 live missions. Each of her instructors, hardened veterans from Tehran Special Ops, had called her the most gifted tactical pilot in the fleet. But Eli wasn't a father today, he was the architect of vengeance. A soft chime echoed through the command deck rear. Admiral Cora stepped forward, her braided black hair tucked neatly under her narrow helm. First wave approaching phase gate, she said. Eli nodded. Initiate drop. All squads, move. In the depths of a dead moon orbiting Valeris Industrial Hub World, a hidden phase gate created by Terran engineers using miniaturized wormhole tech burst to life. From it, 7 stealth cruisers emerged without warning. Their hulls, lined with shifting panels of anti-reflective material, made them shimmer like shadows. No radar caught them, no visual sensor could isolate them. Their mission was precise. Destroy Imperial Depot X-99. This depot wasn't just a warehouse, it was the beating heart of the Empire's Starship fuel distribution. A loss of X-99 would sever supply chains to 4 active fleets. If taken down, entire military sectors would go dark. The Terran fleet didn't hesitate. In perfect silence, the lead destroyer, Oblivion's Edge, deployed its quantum pulse jammers. Communications in the region ceased. Local Velari ships went blind. What came next wasn't flashy. There were no massive explosions or deafening battle cries, only light. A shifting, blue-white beam barely visible cut across the void, brushing against the depot's superstructure. And then, like a collapsing shell, the depot folded inward on itself. Thousands of Velari workers, unaware of the human resurgence, were gone before they even knew they were under attack. There were no survivors, no traces, no retaliation, just silence. Operation Phoenix wasn't war, it was surgery back on Ghostlight. Eli watched the data stream. The depot's signature vanished from all Imperial records. No alarm had been triggered. No fleets dispatched. The Val still believed themselves in control. He turned to Admiral Cora. How many missions online? 37 active. 15 more prepping launch. Losses. Cora shook her head. Eli breathed in slowly. Across the Empire, commanders scrambled to explain why multiple regions had lost fuel, supplies, and intel at the same time. Most blamed clerical errors. Some blamed pirates. None realized the truth. Humanity wasn't just attacking. It was erasing, and they were only getting started in the coming days. A second wave would cripple the Valaris deep space comm relays, then their jump gate matrix, then their weapon development labs. Step by step, strike by strike, the Terran forces operated with the discipline of machines, but every move was guided by human grief. Pain had become precision, suffering had become strategy, and behind every stealth ship's hull, etched in a place only its crew would see, were the names of colonies: Lost Arden, 9 Kepri Base, Oceanus Reach, monuments not of mourning, but of memory. Because humanity remembered everything, every scream. Every betrayal, every ruined city, and now the stars themselves would remember, too. The Empire's blind spot Valari Empire had always believed itself eternal. Its archives spanned 10,000 years, etched into crystalline memory cores, buried deep in vaults beneath Imperial spires. Every conquest, every uprising crushed, every species absorbed. It was all there, meticulously categorized under Imperial stability protocols. But there was one entry that remained dangerously incomplete. Species 342b, Homo sapiens. Initial assessment: primitive, warlike, disorganized. Threat level: negligible. Recommended action: immediate pacification via orbital dominance. That file hadn't been updated since the massacre at Ardent-9. No one had bothered on the Empire's towering capital world of Alta Prime. Bureaucrats strolled through shimmering halls of mirror glass and anti-grav lifts. Everything radiated power and control. On the 100th floor of the Ministry of Star Security, Admiral Visitol, silver-robed Valari with translucent tattoos that pulsed with bioluminescent data, stood before the sector crisis board. Dozens of officers surrounded her, each holding data slab briefings of recent anomalies, broken communication nodes, missing supply lines, vanished fuel convoys. "We are not under attack," she said firmly, her voice smooth, artificial. "We are undergoing a wave of decentralized piracy, nothing we cannot control." No one questioned her. They never did. But as she turned to leave, her neural assistant whispered directly into her auditory feed. Depot X-99 no longer exists. Data shows zero radiation, no explosion pattern, just ... loss. She froze, then blinked twice to reset her feed. The whisper was gone. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the very AI systems supporting their empire were under silent siege. Not with malware, not with brute force hacks, but with understanding. Human scientists, during their 5-year silence, had developed a revolutionary system known as Mirror Protocol's adaptive AI that didn't destroy Imperial code. It learned it, imitated it, became it, then rewrote the rules behind the scenes. Now, Imperial Command didn't just misinterpret data, it received data designed by human hands, beneath the oceans of Europa's moon. Inside a subglacial command hive called Echo Prism lay the central hub of the Mirror Protocol team, led by cybernetics expert Dr. Hannah Mareka, former neuroscientist turned rogue systems manipulator. Her team wasn't composed of soldiers, they were poets of code, and they'd learned to turn words into weapons. "Make their satellites blind," she said, not looking up from her rotating holomat, "and make them believe they're seeing just fine." Her technicians nodded, and without a single missile, without a single explosion, for surveillance constellations across space went black. Still, the Empire reported stable operations. Their feeds displayed artificial calm. Pre-recorded rotations from 6 days ago looped perfectly to match orbital mechanics. Back on Earth's lunar command station, Commander Eli Vaughn reviewed reports flooding in from Ghostlight and Silent Orbit, 2 of the fleet's leading stealth cruisers. Every objective completed. No casualties. Yet it wasn't victory that weighed on him, it was the quiet. "We're too efficient," he murmured. "They haven't even screamed yet." Beside him, Lieutenant Halvorsen, a former Mars colonist turned tactical advisor, said, "They don't even know they're bleeding, sir." That, perhaps, was the most terrifying truth. Humanity had become a scalpel, not a sword, and they were carving the Empire open with surgical precision. Meanwhile, in deep space, aboard the stealth frigate Obsidian Wind, a specialized infiltration team approached their next target, the Imperial ThoughtNet relay on Kilos, AI-governed psychological analytics hub that tracks societal unrest across Imperial territories. If mirror protocols were the virus, Kilos was the immune system. Taking it out meant unleashing chaos. Team lead Captain Moran Reyes floated inside the infiltration bay, her suit thrumming with sewage. Around her were 6 operatives, spies, ex-hackers, one even a reformed Imperial defector who now fought for the Terran cause. "This is the needle," she said through tight gums. "We slip in, we whisper to their mind, and we leave before they blink." What followed was a ballet of shadow using cloaked entry drones and heartbeat sync signal blockers. The team boarded Kilos without tripping a single alarm. While Imperial scientists slept, Reyes' team installed a mirrored behavioral loop into the station's core, logic-altering stress metrics, uprising projections, and population compliance scores. When the Valari AI woke, it would no longer know fear. And that too was the point, because humanity didn't just want to cripple the Empire, they wanted it to collapse from within. All across the Terran network, commanders shared one phrase again and again: burn the roots, not just the branches. By morning, 27 Imperial districts experienced sudden policy shifts. Orders to reduce fleet patrols, memos suggesting reallocation of resources, deactivation of emergency alert systems, all false, all planted by humans. Commander Vaughn looked at the growing list of anomalies now flooding Empire systems, each one planted, each one quietly pushing Valari systems toward failure. And still, they had not retaliated, because they didn't know how. The Empire had no concept of losing this slowly in the luxury towers of Alta Prime. Senators continued planning parades for campaigns they thought they had already won. On the Outer Rim, minor governors wrote off disappearing shipments as trade anomalies, and the Imperial Navy, still waiting for orders, but the orders would never come, because the voices that once gave them were either silenced or speaking, words written by Terran hands. And across the stars, deep in the void where human colonies once burned, now came only silence. Not a silence of death, but a silence of patience, of predators waiting for their prey to realize too late what had been done. The day the stars forgot, somewhere near the fringe of the Zenta spiral, in the belly of a once-forgotten mining moon called Dereth 12, the Imperial Navy maintained a classified fallback Volta contingency storage for relic tech, archive memory, cores and obsolete war strategies that had once been thought too unstable or outdated for modern warfare. The Empire never used it, never needed to. It was little more than a historical museum for the arrogant, until the lights went out. On the first rotation of the 9th Valari cycle, Dereth 12's entire power grid collapsed. Not with an explosion, not with sabotage, but a perfect systems shutdown. Every relay fried simultaneously, every backup rendered useless. The power coils didn't just fail, they turned themselves off. As security scrambled to investigate, the internal vault doors creaked open without warning, granting access to files last touched centuries ago, battle logs of failed invasions, suppressed reports on Terran adaptability, and worst of all, a sealed warning from a forgotten Imperial reconnaissance officer: do not provoke Earth, their rage is slow but eternal. High Admiral Kale Viaran, commander of the 7th Imperial Corps, sat in his dreadnought orbiting over Vorka 3, unaware of what had happened. His ships were polished, his ranks full, and still, without him knowing, nearly half his fleet's navigational uplinks were now rerouted through false Imperial satellites, constructed by human engineers. His command had already been hijacked. Across dozens of such fleets, humans weren't just winning battles, they were rewriting the battlefield. Back in the Terran lunar bunker complex known as Gravemind Command, the screen shimmered with another red dot blinking out from a galactic map. Another enemy relay lost. Another silent strike completed. Commander Eli Vaughn stood before a circular war table, surrounded by leaders not just from Earth, but from Mars, Titan, and Ceres. They wore no medals. They didn't need them. Their war wasn't about pride, it was about balance. And the balance was shifting. 87 outposts disrupted, reported Lieutenant Ashia Malek, her voice clipped and professional, all without exposure. Mirror protocols continue to hold across Valari systems. Their entire empire still believes it's winning. Good, said Eli. Let them throw their victory parade. We'll write the epilogue. There was a subtle ache in his chest, a pulse that hadn't left him since Operation Eclipse. That was the night his brother's ship, Redshift Nova, had been vaporized by a Valkyrie orbital lance over the colony of a NKAA-5. All they'd found was his name etched in a melted pilot badge, and a heartbeat. That heartbeat had become the cadence of Terran resistance. Meanwhile, buried under the smog-choked clouds of the gas giantess Arian, a hidden Valari research base began broadcasting odd telemetry. Their long-range cosmic sensors, once used to scan for incoming asteroid threats, now saw something strange. Empty space moving, a vast shadow, not visible by light, not producing detectable energy, but distorting everything around it. It moved like fog, rippling space just slightly out of phase. The Valari researchers panicked. Some speculated a spatial anomaly, others a natural singularity. But in truth, they had just detected Earth's new Sentinel-class warships, flagships so massive, so cloaked in subdimensional plating, that they appeared to ripple reality itself. And these weren't just battleships, they were symbols. Each Sentinel was constructed over the ruins of a destroyed Terran colony, Ardent, Valhina, Ishtar's Gate. Each bore the names of the fallen. Their engines thrummed with neutron compression drives. Their hulls could withstand a direct starcore discharge, and their central weapons bay housed the apex of Terran science, the dimensional lance. Unlike the phase shift cannons used in surgical strikes, the dimensional lance didn't just erase matter, it folded entire regions of space into microscopic anomalies, collapsing targets without leaving even the memory of their existence. Back in the underground academies of New Earth, children learned about these vessels in nursery rhymes. Big ships sleep in the dark, wait for stars to bark. When the Empire starts to cry, they'll rise into the sky. The war had seeped into the culture. Art, poetry, song, everything was war now. But it wasn't mournful. It was a hymn of return. Eli stood in Graveman's observatory, watching as Sentinel Sovereign passed silently overhead, its outline barely visible through the lunar atmosphere's shimmer. Behind it, another two followed, silent as ghosts, trailing quantum wake disturbances like ripples in time. He turned to Admiral Cora. Activate the skyhook net. Bring them all home. She nodded, eyes gleaming. In secret orbital stations above every major Imperial world, disguised as ancient derelict debris fields, Terran forces had planted skyhooks, localized wormhole beacons capable of jumping entire fleets into fixed low orbit positions. Until now, they had been dormant. Now they would awaken. The skyhook net was humanity's silent blade in instant deployment framework that could place Terran warships directly over Imperial capitals in seconds. It wasn't just bold. It was final. At the same time, deep in Valari military command, analysts began picking up inconsistencies. Patrol vessels vanishing, relay times stretching too long, fuel depots undersupplied, and then they noticed the music. Music. Faint melodies, embedded in static bursts across their encrypted military channels. No voice, just sound. Human orchestras, somber notes, an elegy written for the stars. Valari codebreakers couldn't understand it, but the older ones, the ones who had studied pre-Empire Terran culture, recognized the tune. Beethoven's Symphony No. 7, second movement, Allegretto, a funeral march broadcast from a dozen untraceable sources, humming through every command center like a ghost's lullaby. On Valari screens, another message began flashing, buried deep in their defense networks, blinking like a heartbeat. The storm is not coming. You are already inside it. In the streets of Alta Prime, for the first time in generations, panic rippled, lights flickered, shadows danced across the city's crystalline towers, and far above, the stars seemed to blink, not from cosmic chance, but from something moving through them, something vast, something human. The silence before the thunder in the glittering midnight of Alta Prime's sky. Stars dimmed not from celestial phenomena, but from presence. Orbiting above the capital world, invisible to even the most advanced Valari sensors, were 3 Sentinel-class dreadnoughts. Each one was a planikiller cloaked in dimensional veils and armed with weapons that violated the known laws of physics. They waited. Not to attack, but to prove a point. Inside the command center of the lead ship, Sentinel Sovereign, Commander Eli Vaughn stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his reflection fractured across the glass of the viewing panel. Around him, crew worked in silence, each of them born from worlds the Empire had tried to erase. At his side stood his daughter, Layla Vaughn, now captain of the stealth striker unit Ghostshade. Her eyes flicked between data feeds, pulse readings, and orbital telemetry with unwavering focus. "We're in position," she said, not looking up. Skyhook net fully online. They won't know what hit them. Eli didn't respond. His thoughts were somewhere else. Behind him, a voice broke. The quiet, "We've received another message from Sector 92. They've lost control of 6 planetary nodes. Entire civilian traffic systems now redirect to phantom coordinates." Eli turned. No response. They still think it's a malfunction. He exhaled. The Valari Empire was not dying loudly, it was suffocating quietly across hundreds of star systems. The mirror protocols had spread like wildfire through every digital artery of the Empire. Communication towers gave weather data that hadn't existed for days. AI traffic drones rerouted food shipments into empty space. Emergency codes translated into lullabies. Imperial command ships began receiving distress signals from locations that didn't exist, and worst of all, their enemies weren't firing, they were waiting. In the isolated Valari research facility beneath the aquamarine oceans of Korazik, a prominent physicist named Vatran was the first to publicly voice the unthinkable. "They are inside our systems, not fighting us, steering us." She was silenced within the hour. Meanwhile, on the surface of Earth, which the Empire still considered a neutralized asset, activity beneath the crust surged. Entire continents now housed interlinked fortress cities, massive underground complexes shielded from orbital detection by quantum interference plating. Populations once divided by language and border were now unified under a single banner, TUC, the Terran Unified Coalition. No government, no borders. Only one goal, to never be conquered again. Above the Indian Ocean Rift, an orbital ring known as Skyforge Array operated non-stop. Its purpose to build the next generation of stealth dreadnoughts. Machines that didn't just fly, they phased. Across the galaxy, Imperial ships used linear navigation. Terran vessels now bent short-distance physics into knots, jumping locally without ever registering acceleration. These ships didn't arrive. They appeared. Back aboard Sentinel Sovereign, Captain Layla stood before her father with a new report. "Our agent embedded in the Valari High Communication Core has activated the Echo script." Eli nodded. "What's the phrase?" Layla smiled grimly. "The light you see is already dead. It'll echo across their command networks for the next 72 hours. He closed his eyes. The phrase was once part of a Terran Star Watcher's poem. Now, it was psychological warfare across the Empire's inner territories. Every screen, every broadcast, every interface began flickering with those words translated automatically into Valari script. Terran speech, binary glyphs, and even light pulses. "The light you see is already dead." First came confusion, then paranoia, then panic. Commanders scrambled to scrub the message. They couldn't. Their systems told them the broadcasts were internal, but no origin could be found. It was as though the message had always been there, waiting for someone to finally notice. Back on Valera-controlled Cavro's station, General Mirik slammed his clawed fist on the table. "Launch all ships. I want a full sweep of orbital space." His sub-commanders hesitated. They'd already launched patrols, and every time nothing had been found. "Launch them again," he bellowed. Meanwhile, above him, Sentinel Sovereign remained still, silent, watching. It was no longer about war, it was about control. Humanity had learned through loss and ruin that control was more powerful than destruction. While the Empire had once relied on brute force and visible dominance, Earth had turned to the shadows, not because they were weak, but because they had studied how to dismantle power without needing to fight it. On. In the encrypted mission, logs of Terran strategist Yozun, who had once been a refugee aboard a colony ship that burned above Juno 3, she wrote, "We don't need to crush them in one blow. We just need them to realize, in 1,000 small moments, that they've already lost." One of those moments came on the Empire's inner moon, Arelon, where a prestigious military academy trained future Imperial admirals. That morning, the simulation chambers refused to activate. Every scenario loaded showed only one thing: alone. Terran stealth ship breaching Imperial defenses in less than 90 seconds, every time. No matter the setup, no matter the parameters, even when the AI was reset, even when data was wiped, the simulation repeated itself again and again and again. The instructors ordered a shutdown of the entire simulation core. The Empire's own systems had become their teachers, reminding them of their weaknesses, over and over, all orchestrated by human code, all deliberate, all devastating. Eli's voice echoed through the Sentinel Sovereign's bridge. "Begin the Ghostfire push. Let's give them one more lesson." Fleet-wide human stealth ships began slipping into position, not for attack, but for message drops, coded pings, mimicry broadcasts, data graphs into high command systems. Everywhere. The Empire turned. It saw itself failing, not knowing which failures were real and which were planted. That uncertainty was the first true strike, because once an empire begins doubting its own reality, it's already lost. Shadows that burn in the outermost orbit of the Valari twin-star system. A silent storm gathered. It wasn't solar, wind, or gravitational disruption. It was the arrival of Earth's shadow armada fleet, so technologically advanced, so perfectly cloaked in subdimensional mesh, that it didn't disturb space, it whispered through it. They called themselves the Ghostfire Division. Each ship bore no insignia, no registry, no nameplate, only a single etched line across their underholes, barely visible to the human eye, for the lost. There was no fanfare, no declaration, only a silent burn through void, synchronized by a distributed AI system, known as Nightingale, born from the ashes of Earth's last surviving lunar mainframe. Nightingale didn't think like the Valeri linear rule-bound. It improvised, it adapted, it anticipated. The Valari still hadn't seen it coming. In the High Council chamber of Alta Prime, the Empire's elite clung to their rituals, their long flowing robes, glittering under vaulted crystalline ceilings, still shimmered with authority. But beneath those ceremonial garments, unease crept like frost. One by one, star systems stopped responding. VEYRA-9-gone. Rexall, is junction jammed. The Spire, home to the Empire's entire northern fleet operations, had just vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, just an entire moon turned into subatomic mist. Councillor Dow barked into his neural relay. Why is there no retaliation? Where is the fleet? But his question was already outdated, because humanity wasn't waiting for permission to retaliate. They were executing a plan years in the making. Within Gravemind Command, Commander Eli Vaughn stood before a sprawling operations matrix that displayed not just ship movements but neural stress maps of Imperial leadership. Their pain, fear, and confusion had become data points monated, charted, and analyzed. At his side, Layla, ever composed, murmured, "The entire high orbit around Alta Prime is exposed. They think their planetary defense ring is still online, and no. We disabled it 2 days ago." Eli gave the faintest smirk. What are they seeing? Simulated feeds from 3 weeks ago, looping perfectly. Then it's time. He raised his voice to the bridge. Initiate Orpheus protocol. Across the fleet, encrypted command keys flashed green. Orpheus wasn't a strike, it was a reveal. Every Terran stealth ship, every orbital probe, every hidden device planted across Imperial territory slowly deactivated its cloaking sequence all at once. From the Valeri's most elite capital world to the dustiest border outpost, the truth became visible. They were surrounded. In the skies of Valeri core systems, thousands of human ships blinked into view like ghosts tearing through the fabric of the galaxy. Admiral Weiss, who had once dismissed Earth's warning as the mewling of primitives, watched in stunned silence as orbital displays turned red one after the other. Fleet command screamed into the comms. Where did they come from? And no one had an answer, because the real answer had never been about where humans were. It was about when they would strike. Above Alta Prime, the Sentinel Sovereign broke position and began its descent, not in flames, but in complete silence. The ship didn't roar, it didn't even hum. Its engines bent light itself, making the stars behind it shimmer like ripples on water. Then came the first transmission to the Empire in 5 years. It wasn't diplomatic, it wasn't a demand, it was a file, a holographic record of the ardent massacre. The moment Admiral Marcus vaporized the Terran colony and broadcast his laughter over open comms, the file ended with a voice. Not synthetic, not a machine, a child. Crying. The file looped again, and again, and again, all across Valari space. Every screen, every control room, every officer, every citizen, forced to see what their empire had tried to erase. Admiral Marcus, now disgraced and confined to a shadow post deep within a hollowed asteroid base, watched it too, and for the first time, his hands trembled. "This is retribution," he whispered, but he was wrong. This wasn't just retribution, it was a lesson inside the Terran War archives. A single guiding principle had been passed down through every officer, technician, and strategist since Operation Phoenix began. We do not fight for revenge. We fight to make sure it never happens again. It was this clarity of purpose that made humanity unstoppable. As Valari ships scrambled to respond, only one weapon fired. From Sentinel Sovereign's forward lance, the dimensional core opened. It was not a beam. It was not a missile. It was a fold. In reality, a ripple, a breath, and then the Imperial Orbital Command Citadel dissolved, not shattered, not burned, dissolved like it had never existed in its place. Only empty space, altar primes, skies turned red, dot below, chaos ignited, sirens screamed, civilians panicked, and still, no human ship fired again. They didn't need to. One strike was enough. Because this war was not a dance of destruction, it was a reconstruction of fear. Commander Eli's voice, .com, and measured, was broadcast across all Imperial frequencies. This is not a war, it is a reminder. You silenced our children. We taught our children to speak through the stars. You conquered our homes. We made the void our fortress. You called us weak, primitive. You were wrong. Across the Empire, something began to break, not technology, faith. Faith in their invincibility, faith in their dominance, faith in the myth that Earth had been defeated. It had not, it had simply been watching, and now the galaxy was watching. Earth not as a victim, but as a force so quietly terrifying, so patient and exacting, that not even the stars would forget. The Empire that died without a war. On the final day before the reckoning, the skies above Alta Prime shimmered with a stillness no citizen could comprehend. No thunder, no warning sirens, no heroic music from the Imperial Broadcasting Chorus, just silence. It wasn't empty, it was deliberate. Above the capital, 20 Terran dreadnoughts loomed in orbit, their hulls cloaked in the flickering veil of phase shift fielding. To the naked eye they appeared half there, like memories caught between dreams and daylight. Below, the Empire watched with growing dread as their greatest cities continued to power down one by one, without bombs. Without fire. The Empire wasn't being attacked, it was being erased. Inside the throne-like command chamber of the Sentinel Sovereign, Commander Eli Vaughn stood in full dress, his black collar marked only by a single silver thread, the symbol of unity. Behind him, every member of Gravemind Command stood silently. Engineers, scientists, analysts. None of them soldiers in the traditional sense, yet every one of them had rebuilt humanity's legacy with their own hands. He raised a closed fist. A hologram blinked to life in the center of the room, displaying the last message transmitted by the Valari High Council only moments ago. It was a final attempt to open communication. We offer truce, diplomatic concessions, a shared future. The room didn't laugh. They didn't even speak. Instead, Eli pressed a single button. Declining. The message vanished into digital ash. It wasn't out of cruelty, it was because the time for diplomacy had passed 5 years ago, when Valari firestorms turned New Eden to glass and mothers screamed into oxygen-starved cums that never reached Earth. Now, Earth spoke in a language the Empire had taught it, unmistakable dominance. Across Imperial systems, synchronized Terran fleets emerged from skyhook corridors, slipping into orbit in silence and surrounding key Valari outposts, governmental complexes, and strategic infrastructure, but they did not fire. Not yet. They didn't have to. The Empire was breaking itself. On the colony world of Zat, Valari civilians flooded into the streets, begging for direction. Officers barked conflicting orders. Com towers screamed with overlapping alerts. Fleet G1 has gone missing. Valari Prime has shut down its planetary AI sector. 9 lost contact with medical logistics. No response from the Home Defense Council. And worse yet, the music returned. Across every screen, across every audio relay, the old Terran melody whispered once, more slow, solemn, and absolute. Beethoven's Symphony No. 7. Allegretto, a funeral march for an empire that refused to hear the cries of the weak, now being outmaneuvered by those it deemed beneath notice. In the tactical war rooms of the Valari Deep Fleet Command, Admiral Rethus slammed his fists against his console, blood leaking from his palms. Find me one ship to shoot at, one, but there was none. That the enemy was everywhere and nowhere. The enemy had become the environment. Meanwhile, above Alta Prime, the Sentinel Sovereign released a final package into low orbit, an encrypted code string designed to activate echo reversal, the ultimate phase of the Mirror Protocol. What did it do? It simply made the Valari systems believe they no longer existed. All AI relays began projecting false coordinates. Ships arrived at wrong destinations. Internal gravity failed to match external mapping. Navigation AI began reporting travel into negative space. Food supply drones looped endlessly between imaginary coordinates. AI medbots administered treatments for injuries that didn't exist. They weren't being destroyed. They were being disoriented into extinction. Inside a bunker beneath the Imperial Senate Hall, High Counselor Dal stared at a map of his Dominion, nothing was green, nothing blinked. Only one word repeated over and over on his console. Null, he whispered aloud. What do they want? The answer came, not through a weapon, but through a single, clean signal. From Earth, spoken in calm Terran standard. This is not conquest. This is memory. You tried to wipe us out. Now we will teach the stars to never forget. In the outer colonies, those that had suffered under Valari cruelty, watching alien species rose to their feet as one, the former slaves of the Reldari mining moons. Every species the Valari had once enslaved now watched this final act unfold. Breathless, they didn't see humanity as saviors, they saw them as warnings, because what rose from Earth was not a rebellion, it was a reconstruction of justice. And then came the final act. Eli Vaughn stood in the center of the Sentinel Sovereign's war room. Behind him, screens flashed one last command to the fleet. It wasn't an attack order, it was a shutdown key. Deactivate all planetary sabotage protocols. Leave them powerless. Let them remember. Across the Valari homeworld, power grids went out, satellites fell silent, weapons systems collapsed, and the skies full of Terran dreadnoughts remained still. Not one shot fired, because the Empire wasn't worth it to humanity. This wasn't revenge, this was the ultimate restraint, to not obliterate what could be taught a lesson. For years, the Valari thought they were dealing with primitives who needed to be ruled. Now they realized, far too late, they were living in a galaxy where humanity had become the new standard, not through bloodlust, but through discipline, through memory, through unbreakable unity. In the end, no monument was erected on Alta Prime, no flag was planted, no treaty was signed. Instead, the Terran fleet turned silently, leaving behind only a single broadcast, echoed through every remaining Valari system, translated into every tongue. There will be no next time. And with that, Earth disappeared back into the stars, quiet, unmerciful, and eternal.